Well, even though it came in a little late last night, DezzieArts, aka Michelle, formerly Jacalador, on DeviantArt, even though it came in late last night, the 21st part, chapter, if you will, of the Melting Mei series in the final year, that's right, the final year, the fifth and final year of the series, basically, like I said, came out last night on DeviantArt. And it's really interesting where she's taking it right now because at the end of part 20, they had encountered this girl. They shapeshift themselves because, they could separate and, merge together and all that, and so on. They've gotten to a point to basically, as we find out more in this chapter, they could separate individually back into themselves, that being Elizabeth, Mia, and Zara. They can separate back into the individual selves and still keep the fusion daughter, Libby, or Levi, if you will, intact. Levi, can still be herself. That's how potent the merger and everything was with them. So, anyway, though, we ended the last chapter, like I said, with them merged as Libby, and Libby deciding to shapeshift into a guy, which, led to, of course, a night of intimacy with this one girl they met at a club. But it was during the intimacy that something strange happened, and this is where, the first part of the final season, the final, I guess you could say, act in the Melting Mei series started, or kind of ended, the first part being part 20. And that is the fact that the girl that they were getting it on with started to melt into goo. And they weren't sure, they weren't sure exactly what was going on. So that's where we pick up here. And what's interesting is they do separate. They do separate and everything. And Levi, if you will, is feeling a little sad, but also very, embarrassed, if you will, embarrassedly, kind of like an embarrassment, sad or not sure, kind of concerned, if you will, kind of an embarrassment like sadness, concern hybrid. And Zara and Mia and Elizabeth, they all separate from her, and they're basically able to, I guess, like I said, be themselves again. And Libby is able to be herself again. Is able to be herself, I should say, because she was made from all three of them. And Zara, she's kind of more like I guess you could say, the scientist of the group, and Elizabeth is kind of like I guess you could say, the spy, kind of like the hacker of the group and all that, or basically the one that can get the information, when they need, and basically help them get around certain situations without any problems. So what happens is they got to figure out, okay, how do we get this girl back to her place to figure out what occurred? So basically, this girl, she's still melting and everything. She's still very gooey now. So they have to basically find a way, which they do, to get her out of the area and back to her apartment, back to where she lives. So they disguise themselves as her friends, and they sneak out. Because again, Elizabeth has this hacker, spy kind of background, so she's able to kind of figure out a way to get them to where they got to go. So they end up going to this girl's place. She has a name. I think it's Sakara, or something. I don't know. Basically, but anyway, they take her back to her place. She's still melty. She's still all melted and gooey and all that. And she's still melting and all that. But she's out cold. But here's the thing. She's out cold. She's asleep. But, she's a melted puddle of goo right now. And obviously she's not only knocked out and asleep, but she's in a pleasurable sleep. Like she's, dreaming pleasurable dreams, if you know what I mean. And her melted form is rippling, like a puddle would ripple in rain or with wind or whatever. So basically they want to know what's going on. And Zara starts thinking about something she had thought about before. And she came to the conclusion that because they had been so exposed, Mei and her and then Elizabeth, to the point that they were able to create Libby to be her own individual, even though she's a creation of a fusion of all three of them. Basically, long story short, Zara comes to the conclusion that because they've been given so much, I guess you could say dosage of the formula that first gave Mei her powers, and then again like I say, she passed it on to Zara and then Elizabeth, and that, all together created Libby. Basically, Zara has come to the conclusion, because she was trying to think about this for some time, that they in turn became the formula. They in turn, basically, from what Zara is able to come up with, they themselves are now so immersed with the formula. The formula is basically part of their DNA, that they don't need to use it, to sustain their abilities, because it's now part of their DNA, part of the, orgasm, and, I wouldn't say orgasm, but it's part of their internal functions, if you will. It's part of the internal functions, if you will. And basically, it's part of the body structure, the blood cells and all that. That's what I'm trying to get at. But anyway, she's come to this conclusion that basically because they've been so, immersed in it, to the point that they were able to fuse together and create Libby, their daughter, which is, again, a fusion of all three of them, but can be its own individual while they're even separated. Basically, Zara figures that because they've been so immersed in it, so integrated with that formula, that they themselves have become the formula, and that anytime they come, in contact with someone, even intimately, it will have an effect on that individual. Potentially a temporary, if not permanent effect, depending on the longevity, or the length and longevity they have with that individual. So, this surprises them, because they're not sure whether or not this girl is going to be permanently affected by what happened. Like, basically, is she going to become like them? Then what? So Zara comes up with this idea that she needs a blood sample to kind of go over, potentially what happened. So what do? Well, they wait around, because again, they disguise themselves as this girl's BFFs, and they go to her house, her apartment, and they lie her down in the bed while she's still melted, kind of semi-melted, whatever, and they wait. They want to see what's going to be the effect, and throughout the night, she starts solidifying, so they decide, okay, so they decide to disguise themselves. They fuse back together into Libby, and then Libby then shapeshifts into a into a wax candle that's melting. The kind that you light, and the wax melts as it's, burning. So anyway, they merge back into Libby, they absorb back into Libby, and essentially they become, a candle, that's watching over this girl to see if, anything positive or negative will happen. And the positive is she does solidify. But they do realize, and this is, again, not them, but Zara, I should say, realizes, hey, I need a blood, I'm wondering if I can get a blood sample from this girl to see whether or not what we did to her, could be permanent or just temporary. Because right now, what they're noticing is, what they're noticing with her solidifying the next day is that it looks like it's temporary, but they're not really sure. So Zara wants a blood sample, and Elizabeth comes up with an idea, because again, she has that espionage hacker background kind of, to her resume. So she comes up with the idea to morph them into a coffee mug, but not just any coffee mug, a cracked coffee mug, that would enable them to draw blood from this girl. And this girl, she wakes up, thinks to herself that she had a very weird dream, smells the coffee, doesn't remember putting it on, and this is after she gets out of bed, puts her robe on and everything, and it gives the girls, all four girls, if you will, enough time to morph from a candle into a, cracked cremic mug, if you will, cremic mug. I think cremic or chymic, whatever you want to call all that material. Basically coffee mug, cracked coffee mug. And basically, again, they do this because that way they can get a blood sample. And it works. And as the girl goes and I guess takes care of the cut, it gives them enough time to go into a humanoid form, basically I guess you could say, very big upper region female humanoid form to sneak out. Well, the girl is taking care of the cut and kind of, I guess, taking a shower and all that to kind of wake herself up. And that's basically how the story ends. Or at least this part of the story ends, part 21. And I'm liking what I'm seeing. I'm liking what I'm seeing here because, or not just seeing, but reading here, I should say, because it's really interesting to see where they're going with this. It really is. It's really interesting to see where they're going with this, that being DezzieArts, because it's kind of something we've seen before in these kind of stories, but not really. And what I mean by that is, basically, here you have a story where not one, because usually it's like one or two, but mostly one. But here you have three, plus the fusion daughter that was created from them, that basically have inherited enough, have basically inherited and absorbed and immersed themselves in enough of the formula that we were first introduced to in the first part 5 years ago, that basically now they themselves have become that formula. And that they themselves don't need the formula to keep themselves stabilized or to eject it into somebody if somebody wants to see what it's about, if they discovered them and what they can do. Now they could just be like, okay, here you go, boom. Now you're like us, only temporary. So it's interesting to see, Desi, Michelle, if you will, go off in this direction with the story. It really is. Now the question is, though, how does she wrap it up? Because she's only got basically 2 Mondays left. That's right. She's got 2 Mondays left. She's got the 19th and she's got the 26th. That's right. Now, she could go double. She could go double, if you will, double publication for the series, because we're at 21 right now. 22 would be next week, and then 23 would be the final week. If she wants to even it out, she could do, 24, and we'd be good to go. But that's up to her. But so far, like I said, it's an interesting kind of take of where she's taking the characters, when it comes to the powers and everything. Because my first thought last week was, oh, that Lindsay lady's going to come back and she's going to find out. And the reason for her comeback is she'll find out that, hey, she got duped. But that wasn't the case. Instead, it's a case of, hey, they've become what they used. They've become what they've used. They've become what they've had fun with because they've, basically, addicted themselves so much to it that now they don't need it to be, to have the powers, that they have now. They are basically the power itself. They are basically, like I said, the formula, the potion. They are essentially the goo that gave them the gooey powers in the first place. So, like I said, it's really interesting to see the direction she's going in with the story here and the characters. But the question is, how does she wrap this up? How does she take it to that next level? Well, I know that the next part will basically be them, probably just the three of them, trying to get answers as to what happened. To try to figure out, okay, we got intimate with this girl disguised as we got intimate with this girl while we were disguised as a guy. And because of our intimacy, she ended up becoming gooey. And it's mainly because, again, this is Zahara's, thought and probably actual, correctness. It's because they've been so immersed in the formula that they became the formula. That anytime they get in contact intimately with somebody, they will basically grant that person temporarily the powers that they have. And what's interesting is, they didn't know exactly at first how this happened. They're thinking, okay, are we that powerful? And Libby, because again, she's like the main catalyst she's like the main individual, that walks around and everything without, any suspicion. She kind of basically says that when they were getting intimate with this girl, that because they were a guy, of course, guys have certain bottom, lower region parts, if you know what I mean. That the main regional part for the man, that they were, basically, she felt something basically let loose. She felt something let loose within the girl. And they're not sure whether or not that's going to have an effect on the girl, which is why they wanted a blood sample. Well, Zara did. She wanted a blood sample to see whether or not that girl, because, Libby, because them disguised as a guy, Libby basically being in control, as the male persona they were, basically let loose into this girl. And they're not sure with Libby doing that might have maybe caused something, maybe caused the girl to melt down into goo. They're not really sure. They want to know. And they're not sure if maybe there's a chance that if this girl ends up getting, I guess you could say, if this girl ends up becoming, if you will, child, they're not sure if maybe that'll be a result of what happened with them. And, so again, that's why Zara wanted the blood sample, to ensure maybe nothing will happen, especially after seeing the girl solidify. They just want to make sure. But again, it's a nice little twist, a nice little different direction to go in. But if we know DezzieArts when it comes to these stories, this ain't gonna last long. It's either gonna be the next part or, the final part or final parts, depending on if they do an extra chapter, to where these three will get intimate with each other and just have that gooey fun that, people expect them to have and look forward to them having and everything intimately with each other. But we'll see. We'll see what they do. But so far, so good. I'm liking it and can't wait to see what they discover, whether or not it's a negative effect, that's going to have on the girl, or a unexpected effect that they may have to go back to this girl and say, yeah, we're the reason this happened to you, and here's why, and welcome to the group and all that. We'll see. We'll see what happens. But anyway, though, guys, I know it may sound like a little repetitive. I do apologize, but I just wanted to talk about this, get this out there and everything. And let me know what your thoughts are. Comment down below, like the video, ring the bell for notifications, subscribe to the channel. Also, click on the links in the description to check out my content elsewhere. Check out my content elsewhere here on the internet. I think you will appreciate what you find, in those areas that you click on. And guys, that's really all I can say on Melting Mei Part 21 in the final year of the series. Let me know what your thoughts are if you haven't read it already, or what your thoughts are on what I've had to say in describing it. And what do you think, based on what you've read or what I've described, do you think will be the next direction that DezzieArts Michelle goes in with this story in its final year? let me know. And until then, I am out.